unto this I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard was as it were of a trumpet talking with me. Welcome to Talking Trumpet Radio.
Hey everybody, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Tommy Poland. I'm an associate pastor for a small church plant out here in Trinity, North Carolina, a real small town, just south of Greensboro, North Carolina. Part of the ministry that I've been called to, that I feel God's pulled me into, is really taking the church back to its roots, back to the Acts 2 type church, where we're more engaged in our community. And part of that engagement in the community is learning and figuring out how, through God's guidance, of casting the net out greater to reach folks who are maybe burned out with church. They're what oftentimes the professional Christians will call the unchurched, or reaching out to what we're supposed to do through the Great Commission, which is reaching those who aren't believers. And so, and part of that net casting, I've felt led to start a radio podcast, which is what you're listening to now. And the name of the radio podcast is Talking Trumpet Radio. Give you a couple of reasons behind why we're calling it Talking Trumpet Radio. First of all, if you read in Ezekiel 33, talks about the watchman. And I know one of my fellow podcast folks over on the West Coast, Gonz Shimura, props out to you, Gonz. It kind of inspired me for starting the radio podcast. But his is called Face Like the Sun. It's a YouTube channel, and Gonz does documentaries. And also they have Canary Cry podcast radio, which is done with Gonz and his counterpart, Basil. But anyway, those guys had mentioned, or at least Gonz, you had talked about sometime about Ezekiel 33. And Ezekiel 33 mentions the watchman, and the importance of the watchman standing out and alerting the people of dangers that are coming when the enemy's approaching, and sounding the trumpet. And that's basically part and parcel of why I started the radio podcast. We're calling it Talking Trumpet. And second, in the book of Revelation, chapter 4, verse 1, John says he heard a voice behind him speaking as a trumpet. Basically a loud, booming voice, angelic voice, getting John's attention so he can give them this revelation. So that's kind of the background behind the Talking Trumpet Radio. So we'll have a podcast that'll be linked to the Centerpoint Community Church website. But we'll also have this playing, I guess the proper podcast term or communications term is simulcast. We'll have it also on the Talking Trumpet Radio YouTube channel. And then we'll link it to our Facebook page as well. So I encourage you guys just to start to like our Facebook, Centerpoint Community Church, like the YouTube channel, and subscribe to it for Talking Trumpet Radio. And just keep tuned in here. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have our very first podcast. And we'll see how it goes. I know a lot of podcasts go 30 minutes to an hour to hour and a half. But we're going to have just a range of topics. Anything from theological conversation about five-point Calvinism to eschatological discussions. But even a large bulk and majority of it is something more near and dear to my heart, which is something that is called, and you'll hear this term a lot, fringe Christianity. Now, what is that, Tommy? Well, fringe Christianity is basically a segment of Christianity. It's biblical. We base everything strictly on Scripture, but it's a closer diagnosis of Scripture, if you will, and using that to help overlay across what we're seeing going on in our world today. And it dabbles into stuff, the conspiratorial realm. And I hope that doesn't tune you out, because I think there's some very valuable information that goes undiscussed in our churches today. Things that are taboo topics, stuff like, what about Bigfoot? What about UFOs? What about the paranormal? What about something called transhumanism, where there's discussion of technology eventually merging with mankind in the next 20 to 30 years? These are all real topics that are actually going to be front and center of our lives in the upcoming decades. What's the Bible talk about? Discussing the deception, there's an enemy out there and he's trying to deceive, and he's got a very powerful delusion that he is implementing and will be ramping it up as the years go forward. So these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about on Talking Trumpet Radio. So challenge you guys, when you can, tune in and listen to these podcasts. We're starting them out doing it once a month. As the weeks go on, if I feel moved, or if God leads me to do a little interruption during the week, I may do a quick blurb or some sort of discussion of Scripture. But just keep watching our Facebook page at Centerpoint Community Church, and also subscribe to the Talking Trumpet YouTube station. God bless you guys. Have a good evening, and we look forward to seeing you soon.